ព្រះពុទ្ធទ្រង់អនុគមព្រមតទួនឹងសម្ដែងដោយតនให้ភាពថ្លែងតាមភាវៈគុណករុណា And this story began just as an oral tradition in India, before being recorded in the Pali Canon, the scriptures of Theravada Buddhism. And as that tradition made its way to Sri Lanka, and eventually to Burma and Southeast Asia, and eventually to Cambodia, this story was carried on, originally in Pali, but finally translated into Khmer in the beautiful verse translation of Sotanta Preji An in the 20th century. And so within each Dharma song, there contains not only the story that is being told, but the whole story of this tradition as it emerges in Cambodia from earlier roots. But perhaps those of us who have heard of Smot know it best in terms of funerals. For today in Cambodia and abroad, Smot or Dharma songs are most often heard in times of mourning, in times of grief, in remembrance. And this is both because this tradition has become rarer and rarer, and also because of the power of these melodies, these songs, to connect with emotions of sadness, of grief, of lamentation. And although this tradition and Dharma songs have the gift of being able to express many emotions, from celebration to reverence and to shock or lamentation, this is, again, perhaps another way in which this tradition emerged, that these melodies were exactly the sound of wailing, exactly the sound of lamentation. So sayon he rex mai cao kdai sang ve kan kan ni rung tiếng có phlieng chal meh mi của ai vết ni đạp sắt bỏ tiêu dùng ân công thủ viên dùng chlói kia cập con trở dòng dùng thân incomparable restlessness of this blissful evening's red rays, the thunder, the lightning, rain, and fierce winds, they might as well cause this terrible anguish. Until the hour when the rooster crows, She listens to the dove crying noisily. The puwayang bird responds in turn. The trayong cries out piercingly. The cicada chirps, searching for its mate. The duck laments over the grief of separation. In the forest, the gibbon pities himself, thoughts of love swirling in his heart. Maitri thinks, oh me, why must I suffer like this and come apart inside? I worry for my children, and I pine for my homeland. Alas, I wandered away far from my country. Now there is only this anguish which gnaws at me. I can hardly bear each night and day. This forest cemetery has become my prison. This Dharma song comes from one of the most famous Buddhist stories in Cambodia, that of the Rung Prevasanda Jitla, the Vasantara Jataka, which recalls the story of Prince Vasantara, who, in this legend of the penultimate life of the Buddha, before being born as Shakyamuni and attaining enlightenment, exemplified the perfection of generosity to a point that caused such grief in his family. For Prince Vasantara not only gave up his royal riches and wandered away with his family into the forest, but upon encountering an evil Brahmin, he even gave away his wife and his children to him. And so this song is the lamentation of Maitri, of Prince Vasantara's wife, and shows a side of the tradition that even though these teachings come from a very normative, in a sense, patriarchal tradition of Theravada Buddhism, they express the grief, they express the moral difficulties that are part and parcel of that tradition. And in a way, they tell stories of mythic past that can connect with the suffering that we have all faced in our lives, whether we have been separated from our homeland, whether we are separated from our children or from our loved ones. And so, in this way, Dharma songs express what is most intimate, express what our hearts cannot dare to say, fear of that impermanence that shows up in our lives, for fear of loss, and allow us perhaps to bear it. And more than this, sometimes these Dharma songs, especially for my teachers, they make meaning out of suffering. And one day, when I was with my teacher, the Guru Prumut, and I had been studying and living with him, with his family, for a few months after I met him, studying these chants with him every night, he decided that it was time to share of his experience under the Khmer Rouge. And to share that, he shared of this song.